Okay, let's dive into a topic that's really shaking up the workplace. Attracting, retaining, and actually supporting Gen Z employees.
Yeah, it's a big one.
We've gathered a bunch of reports and articles you shared, insights from Spring Health, LDP Connect, some commentary from SHRM, places like that. So our mission here is, to cut through the clutter, pull out the key insights from this material, and give you a really clear picture of what this generation is looking for.
And importantly, how employers can actually adapt successfully.
Exactly.
And there's a real sense of urgency here. I mean, the sources point out Gen Z is becoming a huge chunk of the workforce.
Right. The numbers are climbing fast. What was it, like 27% by next year?
Yeah, and 30% by 2030. So their presence is growing, but so is the challenge for companies to actually keep them.
That LDP report really hammered home the retention challenge. It said Gen Z moves jobs, nearly 40% more often than millennials did just last year?
That's right. And compared to millennials overall, it's more than double the rate. It's a lot of movement.
Wow. And I saw one survey even suggested they might change jobs up to 10 times between 18 and 34.
10 times. It's quite a different pattern.
And all that churn, it's not cheap, is it?
Not at all. The sources estimate replacing an employee costs something like 40% of their salary.
Oof.
So, it's not just about culture shift. There's a real bottom line reason for companies to get this right.
Definitely. So let's jump into the material. What does it tell us about Gen Z's mindset? What's driving their decisions at work?
Well, the first thing that really jumps out is that they seem to know what they want in a job, in the culture.
And they'll leave if they don't get it.
Pretty much. They seem prepared to move on if those expectations aren't met.
Okay. I remember seeing that, and one SHRM headline sort of hinted these expectations can seem maybe unrealistic. Something about working hard only when they want to.
Yeah, that perception is out there, but the sources we looked at give a more, let's say, nuanced picture. They clarify the core needs Gen Z is really focusing on. Things like well-being, flexibility, transparency, authenticity.
Career growth too, right?
And pay.
Absolutely. Advancement and compensation are huge.
Let's talk about compensation. The material seems super clear on this. Pay is just top of the list.
It really is. Spring Health found 70% of Gen Z surveyed said pay was the most important factor.
70%.
Yep.
And LDP Connect echoed that, right? 52% citing pay as key for taking an offer.
Yep. And that other stat was pretty eye-opening. 68% saying they'd take a job they didn't really like if the salary was good enough.
Wow. So it's very practical for them.
It seems to be less about status and more about, covering costs, enabling that work-life balance they value so much.
Makes sense. And they want promotions faster, too.
Yeah, that came up. 71% expected promotion within 6 months to a year and a half.
That's definitely quicker than older models. And I also noted that environmental impact thing, about 60% avoiding employers they see as bad for the environment.
Right. It ties into their broader value system, doesn't it? It seems like it.
It really does. You have to remember their context, economic uncertainty, climate change concerns, growing up totally digital. The sources argue that understanding this sort of underlying belief system is the key to effective talent strategies.
Okay, so understanding is one thing. How do we translate that into action? What are the actual strategies the sources recommend for creating a Gen Z-friendly workplace?
Well, the material highlights a few core areas. First up, embrace flexibility.
Okay.
And it's presented as more than just a perk. For many, it's like a non-negotiable.
So what does that look like? Remote work? Flexible hours?
All of the above. Control over schedules, maybe non-traditional hours, definitely solid remote or hybrid options. That old 9-to-5 model just doesn't seem to fit for a lot of them.
Right. Flexibility is foundational. What's next?
Second, invest in learning and growth. Seriously invest.
They want to learn new skills.
Constantly. 76% see learning as key to career success. Opportunities to learn and grow are a huge driver of what they consider a good work culture.
That connects back to wanting advancement and better pay too, I suppose. Skills equal value.
Exactly. And the third big one is put corporate values into practice. Walk the talk.
They can spot fluff, basically.
Oh yeah. 80% look for employers whose values align with their own. They want real diversity and inclusion, not just statements. They want meaningful work.
And recognition.
Frequent recognition, yes. If you say you value something, you absolutely have to demonstrate it.
Okay, walk the talk. That seems crucial.
It really does. And kind of woven through all of this is supporting their well-being, particularly mental health. The sources bring this up again and again.
Right. You mentioned well-being as a core need. Let's unpack that. What did the material say about Gen Z and mental health at work?
Well, the data suggests Gen Z reports poor mental health more often than other generations. Higher rates of anxiety, depression, distress.
So employer support isn't just nice, it's critical.
Absolutely critical. And the numbers show it. Spring Health said 66% of Gen Z want more employer investment on mental health and wellness. That's way higher than other groups.
66%. So how can employers respond effectively?
The sources offer concrete ideas. One is normalizing conversations around mental health, just making it okay to talk about.
Creating a safe space.
Exactly. Another is training managers effectively, helping them spot signs of distress, know how to start a supportive, confidential conversation.
That sounds like good practice for everyone, really.
It is, but it's also about leadership actively reducing stigma through open, empathetic communication.
So it feels like Gen Z is really pushing for something that could benefit the entire workforce here.
That's a key point. Their needs often highlight areas for improvement that help everybody. Now, that LDP report, it drills down even further. It identified 4 specific areas Gen Z themselves flagged as most important.
Oh, interesting. What are they?
They called them expectations, transparency, respect, and connection. Think of these as like the core pillars based on their own feedback.
Okay, expectations, transparency, respect, connection. Let's take those one by one. Expectations report, stress, clarity, right?
Very strongly. It found, get this, 78% of their open-ended comments were about wanting clear day-to-day tasks, clear goals, and a realistic idea of the time commitment.
78%. Why is that clarity so vital for them?
The report suggests it gives them a sense of control. In a world causing a lot of anxiety, knowing what's expected provides mental and emotional stability. It cuts down on that anticipatory stress.
It removes the guesswork.
Exactly. There was a quote from one Gen Zer wanting to know exactly what I'm expected to be working on and a full rundown of what this experience is going to look like. Just lay it out clearly.
Okay, that makes total sense. What about the second pillar, transparency?
Transparency, according to LDP, directly reduces stress because it removes worry about the unknown. What Gen Z wants transparency on is timelines, growth opportunities, and, no surprise here, salaries.
Salary transparency again. It keeps coming up. It's not just a preference, is it?
Definitely not. It's highlighted again as the #1 factor influencing their job decisions. They explicitly want companies to list salary ranges in job posts on websites. They want to break that old taboo around talking money.
And they're doing it themselves too, aren't they? That TikTok trend, salary transparency.
Exactly. They're just putting it out there.
Okay.
There was a quote from a COO in the report saying, essentially, pay transparency is just the right thing to do. It shows you value people.
Builds trust.
Right. The report frames it like transparent employers act like authentic brands, which Gen Z values, and it helps them make informed choices.
Okay. Pillar 3, respect. How does Gen Z see respect in the workplace, based on the sources?
The report links respect really tightly to work-life balance, being able to set and maintain boundaries around work. That's fundamental to feeling respected.
Is this where that whole quiet quitting discussion fits in?
It is, and the sources tend to frame quiet quitting less as slacking off and more as assaulting boundaries. A desire for balance and respect that might be universal, but Gen Z feels more empowered to voice it.
Ah, so it's about boundaries, not necessarily disengagement.
That's the argument. One Gen Z person was quoted saying they are very strict about having work-life balance. It's about defining the role work plays in their life.
Okay. But respect is more than just boundaries.
Oh, absolutely. It's also feeling valuable, seeing how your work actually makes an impact, getting real feedback, and being treated like an equal, not just, the intern.
Right. Feeling like your contribution matters.
Yes. Sources shared quotes like wanting to feel valuable at my job or an intern feeling respected because they were treated as an equal member of the team. Seeing that impact seems key.
Got it. And the final pillar.
The fourth one is connection, which might seem a bit counterintuitive for a generation that grew up online.
But they want workplace connections.
Highly value them according to the sources, especially social connections.
Interesting. And who do they most want to connect with?
This was really telling. It's mostly their peers, their potential teammates. The LDP survey found nearly 59% wanted to connect with team members before starting.
More than supervisors or HR.
Significantly more. Supervisors were around 24%, HR only about 6%. They want to know who they'll be in the trenches with, day to day.
Makes sense. Peers are often your first line of support. That quote about peers being who you go to before you go to your boss felt very real.
It did. And they're looking for potential work besties, people they could actually be friends with outside work. The report mentioned 45% want to know about a coworker's personality and interests, compared to just 37% prioritizing work style.
They want the personal connection first.
It seems so, and the sources suggest the pandemic disrupting their social development might make these workplace connections even more important now.
So how can companies help make these connections happen?
Things like group chats for new hires, maybe social events before the first day. One poll showed 45% preferred connection opportunities over just getting logistical info before an internship.
Okay, so we've covered the what expectations, transparency, respect, connection. Let's shift to the how. How do you effectively communicate with Gen Z based on this material?
Right. The delivery matters. And it might surprise you. Despite being digital natives, 51% prefer getting info about a new job or onboarding in concise, easy-to-read, written formats.
Written, not video or audio.
Nope, written was preferred. And concise over lots of detail, only 35% wanted tons of detail.
Why written, do the sources say?
It lets them digest it on their own time and easily refer back. Think email, Slack, Teams. People mention liking email to gather my thoughts before I respond, or using reply functions in chats.
Okay, written and concise. What about frequency? How often do they want to hear from employers?
Frequency is really key, especially early on. They want quick follow-ups after interviews. It reduces anxiety.
Makes sense.
And then before they start, maybe weekly contact. It builds excitement and that connection we talked about. One quote mentioned wanting constant communication without bombarding me.
A balance. And once they've started?
Daily check-ins with supervisors seem to be preferred, or maybe every other day.
Daily. Why so often?
The sources argue it reinforces all four pillars. It clarifies expectations, allows for transparent feedback, shows respect because they feel supported, and builds that connection. Gen Zers mentioned feeling more supported by daily check-ins.
Okay, so communication needs to be written, concise, frequent, and intentional, especially given how much digital noise they navigate.
Yeah.
That average screen time stat was almost 7 hours a day.
6 hours, 48 minutes, yeah. And the sources even link this to rising attention deficits, suggesting communication styles just have to adapt to be effective.
Wow. Okay, before we wrap this deep dive, I wanted to touch on something else. Some of the source material, maybe through images or phrasing, hints at this narrative of Gen Z being like a problem generation or pitting generations against each other.
Yeah, that narrative is definitely out there.
Yeah.
But the LDP report and others really push back against that framing.
How so?
They argue Gen Z isn't necessarily being difficult. They're advocating for changes around transparency, mental health, work-life balance that are often based on values many people share across generations.
So they're not a problem. They're maybe catalysts, driving changes that could actually make work better for everyone.
That's exactly the perspective many sources offer. Understanding Gen Z isn't just about managing one group. It's about understanding where the future of work is heading and recognizing these sort of universal needs that maybe weren't voiced so clearly before.
Okay, so let's summarize the core takeaways from this material for you. To really attract and keep Gen Z talent, the focus needs to be on clear expectations, radical transparency, especially around pay,
Can't stress that enough.
fostering respect through genuine work-life balance and valuing their impact, and building strong social connections, particularly peer-to-peer.
And communicating effectively written, concise, frequent, intentional.
Right. These aren't just minor tweaks. They seem like foundational shifts reflecting their experiences.
Absolutely. It's about understanding the forces shaping their perspective and responding thoughtfully.
It really makes you think. If Gen Z is pushing so hard for changes rooted in these widely shared values like well-being, balance, transparency, what other parts of traditional work culture might be, ripe for a rethink? And how could that transformation benefit employees of all ages?